Commander Zethkar of the Hegemony Fleet adjusted his battle harness as the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion dropped out of hyperspace. Before them stretched a small solar system with 7 planets, one of which showed the telltale signs of recent colonization. The blue-green world hung in space like a jewel, completely unaware of the doom approaching. Target acquired, Commander, reported his tactical officer, a scarred Vorthak warrior whose cybernetic eye glowed red in the dim lighting of the bridge.
Single inhabited world. Primitive settlements detected. No orbital defenses visible.
Zethkar clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. This would be another easy conquest for the Hegemony, just like the hundreds of worlds that had fallen before them over the past 3 centuries. The galaxy belonged to the strong, and no species had proven stronger than the combined might of the Hegemony's 12-member races. "Any response to our arrival?" he asked, his translator converting his chittering language into the common tongue used by all Hegemony forces.
"Negative, sir.
No military vessels detected. Some civilian craft in orbit, but nothing that poses a threat." The bridge crew worked efficiently around him. Vorthak warriors checked weapon systems, while Kellyan technicians monitored shields and power levels. A Drakmari communications specialist listened for any transmissions from the planet below. This was the might of the Hegemony, 12 species working in perfect harmony to bring order to the galaxy, one conquest at a time.
"What do we know about this species?"
Zethkar inquired, pulling up the initial scout reports on his command console. "They call themselves humans," replied Intelligence Officer Mixtal, her serpentine form coiled around her workstation.
"Bipedal mammals, recently achieved interstellar travel. This appears to be one of their first colony worlds, established approximately 40 standard years ago.
Population estimated at 2 million.
Zethkar nodded.
Young species always made the same mistake, they spread themselves thin across multiple worlds before developing proper defenses.
It made conquest simple. "Standard protocol," he ordered. "Send the ultimatum."
The communications array powered up, broadcasting on all frequencies toward the planet below. The message was simple and had been delivered to countless worlds: submit to Hegemony rule or face total annihilation. Species who surrendered immediately were allowed to exist as client races, their technology and resources added to the Hegemony's strength.
Those who resisted were eliminated completely.
Within minutes, a response crackled through the communications system.
The voice was calm, speaking in the human language which their translators quickly decoded. "This is Governor Sarah Chen of New Eden Colony. We receive your message, but we don't understand. What gives you the right to demand our surrender?" Zethkar almost laughed. They always asked that question.
"Patch me through," he commanded. The view screen shimmered to life, showing a human female with dark hair and determined eyes. She sat in what appeared to be a basic command center, clearly improvised from civilian equipment. Behind her, other humans worked frantically at various stations. "Governor Chen," Zethkar began, his image transmitted to her screen.
"I am Commander Zethkar of the Hegemony Fleet. The right you ask about is the right of the strong over the weak.
Your species is young, primitive, and alone. You have no allies, no weapons that could threaten us, and no hope of survival if you choose to resist."
The human's expression didn't change. "And if we surrender?"
"You become a client race of the Hegemony. Your people continue to exist, though under our rule. Your technology and resources become ours. It is a generous offer."
Governor Chen was quiet for a moment, then asked, "How many worlds have you conquered with this method?"
"Over 3,000 in the past 3 centuries, Zethkar replied proudly.
"The Hegemony brings order to the galaxy." "I see."
The human woman leaned back in her chair.
"Commander, I need to discuss this with my council. Can you give us 1 hour to deliberate?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked in amusement.
"Of course.
But understand that delay will not bring rescue.
Your species' homeworld is many light years away, and even if they sent their entire fleet, it would arrive far too late to save you."
"Understood," Chen replied calmly. 1 hour. The transmission ended, and Zethkar settled back to wait.
Some species took time to accept their fate, but they always made the right choice in the end. His fleet of 50 dreadnoughts and 200 support vessels made resistance impossible. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're detecting increased transmission activity from the planet. They appear to be sending messages to multiple locations."
"Let them say their goodbyes," Sethkar said dismissively. "It changes nothing." Exactly 1 hour later, Governor Chen's face reappeared on the view screen.
She looked tired but resolute.
"Commander Sethkar, we have reached our decision. And we decline your generous offer."
The bridge fell silent. In 3 centuries of conquest, only a handful of species had chosen resistance, and none had survived it. "Governor," Sethkar said slowly, "I want to be certain you understand.
Resistance means the complete destruction of your colony.
Every man, woman, and child will die.
Your buildings will be reduced to ash. Nothing will remain."
"We understand," Chen replied quietly.
"But we also understand something else. We know what happens to client races in the hegemony. We've intercepted communications from your conquered worlds. The Kellians were once proud engineers, now they're slaves in your shipyards.
The Vorthak were warriors, now they're your foot soldiers, dying for your expansion. The Drakmari were artists and philosophers, now they're just tools for your war machine."
Sethkar's mandibles twitched with annoyance.
"They serve a greater purpose." "They serve your purpose," Chen corrected. "We choose freedom over slavery, even if that freedom only lasts a few more hours."
"So be it."
Sethkar cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare for planetary bombardment. I want this world reduced to molten slag within the hour."
As the massive fleet moved into bombardment formation, Sethkar felt a strange unease.
Most species begged or tried to negotiate when faced with annihilation. The humans' calm acceptance of death was unusual.
"All vessels report ready for bombardment," announced the tactical officer. "Begin firing." The space around New Eden lit up as hundreds of plasma cannons opened fire simultaneously.
The first wave of destruction lanced down toward the planet's surface, striking cities and settlements with devastating precision.
On the viewscreen, Sethkar watched pillars of fire bloom across the planet's surface.
But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of the usual panic and chaos that accompanied planetary bombardment, the human transmissions increased. Not distress calls or pleas for mercy, but something else entirely. "Sir," the communications officer called out, his voice uncertain, "they're broadcasting on all frequencies."
"It's not a surrender, it's a message."
"What kind of message?"
They're documenting everything, sir. Recording the bombardment, transmitting it across their communication networks. They're telling other human worlds what's happening here." Sethkar frowned.
"Cut off their transmissions." "Trying, sir, but they're using multiple relay stations across the system."
"We'd have to destroy every piece of communication equipment to stop them completely."
"Then, do it." As the fleet began targeting the relay stations, more human voices filled the communications channels. Men, women, even children speaking calmly into recording devices as destruction rained down around them.
"This is Dr. James Mitchell from New Eden Medical Center.
The aliens are destroying our world, but they haven't broken our spirit. To anyone receiving this message, remember us not as victims, but as free people who chose to stand for what's right."
Sarah Patterson, teacher at New Eden Primary School.
"We're going to die today, but we want humanity to know these creatures, this hegemony, they're not invincible. They're bullies who prey on isolated worlds.
Stand together, and you can beat them." Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, Colonial Defense Force.
"I've studied their ships, their tactics.
They rely on overwhelming force against unprepared targets. But if you know they're coming, if you're ready, they can be stopped."
The messages continued even as the bombardment intensified.
Humans describing the fleet's composition, tactical formations, weapon capabilities.
They were dying, but they were turning their deaths into intelligence for their species. "Sir," the intelligence officer hissed, "they're conducting tactical analysis even under bombardment. These readings they're transmitting, they're detailed specifications of our fleet capabilities."
Sethkar felt the first stirring of real concern.
In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had done anything like this. Most civilizations crumbled when faced with overwhelming force. They begged, they surrendered, they tried to negotiate. They didn't calmly document their own destruction while conducting military intelligence operations.
How much longer until the planet is completely pacified? He demanded. Approximately 40 minutes, sir.
But the transmissions are still getting through. They've activated emergency beacons, quantum entanglement communicators, even primitive radio signals.
Everything is being broadcast to their homeworld and other colonies.
On the viewscreen, New Eden was dying. Cities burned, oceans boiled, and the atmosphere itself began to burn away under the sustained bombardment. But still the human voices continued, calm and determined even as their world ended.
This is Governor Chan. Final transmission from New Eden. Commander Zethkar, if you're listening, I want you to know something. You think you've won here today.
You think you've eliminated another potential threat to your empire.
But you've made a mistake.
Zethkar found himself leaning forward despite himself. You've shown humanity what you really are, Chen continued, her voice steady even as explosions thundered in the background.
And you've given us something precious, foreknowledge.
Every detail of your ships, your weapons, your tactics is now in the hands of every human world. We've had 40 years to prepare this colony, but our homeworld has had 2 centuries to build and grow and learn. A massive explosion cut off the transmission temporarily, then Chen's voice returned, weaker but still clear.
You wanted to send a message to the galaxy about hegemony power. Instead, you've sent a message to humanity about hegemony weakness. We'll remember New Eden, Commander. And we'll be ready for you. The final transmission ended as the planet's surface finally succumbed to complete destruction. New Eden was gone, reduced to a cooling ball of molten rock.
2 million humans had died in less than 2 hours. But, as Zethkar stared at the destroyed world, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had ever turned their own annihilation into a weapon against the hegemony.
Sir, his tactical officer reported, planet sterilized. All life signs eliminated.
Good, Zethkar replied, but his voice lacked its usual satisfaction.
Set course for the next target system.
As the hegemony fleet began to move away from the remains of New Eden, none of them noticed the small automated probe that had been launched from the planet's surface just before the bombardment began. The probe's course would take it far from the system, carrying with it complete recordings of the battle and detailed scans of every ship in the hegemony fleet. It would reach the nearest human outpost in 3 weeks, and, from there, the information would spread to every corner of human space in days.
The hegemony had just fought their last easy battle, though they wouldn't realize it for months to come.
Humanity had seen the face of their enemy, learned their capabilities, and, most importantly, understood their methods. The galaxy's newest species had just received the most expensive education in galactic warfare ever given, paid for with the lives of 2 million of their own people. As Zethkar settled into his command chair for the journey to the next system, he pushed away his doubts. The humans were dead, their world destroyed. That was all that mattered. He had no way of knowing that in the depths of human space, an old species was awakening to war. An old species that had learned, in the crucible of their own world, that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to prepare for total war. The hegemony had conquered 3,000 worlds over 3 centuries by finding isolated, unprepared civilizations and crushing them before they could organize resistance. They were about to discover what happened when they attacked a species that had time to prepare.
Admiral Crixtel studied the tactical display with growing unease.
3 months had passed since the destruction of the human colony called New Eden, and the hegemony's expansion into this sector should have proceeded smoothly.
Instead, every subsequent target had proven to be abandoned. Report from the 5th system, Admiral, called his intelligence officer. Another empty colony.
Signs of recent evacuation, but no inhabitants remain.
The Admiral's crystalline carapace shifted color from deep blue to agitated purple.
As a Zarathi, his emotional states were impossible to hide from his crew. Around the bridge of the massive command ship Galactic Order, representatives from all 12 hegemony species worked in their usual efficient manner, but he could sense their confusion.
That makes 7 empty human colonies, Admiral Crixtel muttered to himself. They're evacuating ahead of us.
His aide, a young Kellyan engineer named Trakven, looked up from his console.
How is that possible, Admiral?
Our fleet movements are classified at the highest levels. Before the Admiral could answer, the communications station erupted with activity. Lieutenant Vexmar, a Drakmari communications specialist, swiveled his serpentine head toward the command center.
Admiral, we're receiving a transmission.
It's coming from the edge of the system, but there are no ships on our sensors.
Put it through.
The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform.
Unlike Governor Chen's improvised command center, this one looked professional, built for war.
The man was older, with gray hair and hard eyes that seemed to stare directly at Admiral Crixtel.
I am Admiral Jonathan Hayes of the United Colonies Defense Force, the human said without preamble. You are trespassing in human space.
A ripple of surprise went through the bridge crew. The hegemony had never encountered a species that claimed territorial sovereignty after losing worlds to conquest.
Admiral Crixtel activated his own transmission. Admiral Hayes, I am Admiral Crixtel of the Hegemony Fleet.
Your species has no claim to space. You have proven incapable of defending your own colonies. Hayes smiled, and there was something unsettling about the expression.
We abandoned those colonies 3 months ago, after New Eden transmitted their final gift to us. We know you're coming, Admiral.
We know your ship specifications, your tactical formations, your standard operating procedures.
We've had time to prepare.
Preparation means nothing against superior force, Crixtel replied, though he felt less certain than his words suggested. You have witnessed what happens to those who resist the hegemony.
Indeed we have. We've seen exactly what you're capable of.
Hayes leaned forward in his chair.
The question is, have you seen what we're capable of? The transmission cut off, leaving the hegemony bridge in silence.
Sir, called the sensor operator, a multi-eyed Zephyrian, I'm detecting movement at the edge of the system.
Multiple contacts. How many? Admiral Crixtel demanded. Uncertain, sir. They're using some kind of stealth technology. Getting partial readings, at least 40 vessels, possibly more.
The Admiral felt his carapace shift to yellow, confusion mixed with the first hints of concern.
The hegemony's standard protocol was overwhelming force against unprepared enemies. They brought massive fleets to crush resistance before it could organize.
The idea that humans had assembled a significant fleet in only 3 months seemed impossible.
All vessels to battle stations, he ordered. Deploy in Formation 7.
Around them, the hegemony fleet, 60 dreadnoughts and 300 support vessels, moved into their proven battle formation. Ships spread out to maximize firing arcs while maintaining mutual support. It was a formation that had brought victory in countless engagements.
As they moved into position, the human fleet finally revealed itself.
Ships decloak one by one along the system's edge, and Admiral Crixtel felt his carapace flash bright orange in shock.
The human vessels were unlike anything in the hegemony database.
They were sleek, angular, and covered in what appeared to be adaptive armor plating.
More concerning was their formation. They weren't deployed like any civilization the hegemony had encountered before.
Sir, the tactical officer reported, the human ships are not following standard battle doctrine. They appear to be using small unit tactics, breaking into independent squadrons.
Admiral Crixtel studied the display.
Instead of massing their forces for maximum firepower, the humans had divided their fleet into dozens of small groups, each operating independently. It made no sense from a traditional perspective. Admiral, Intelligence Officer Sindar called out, our database has no record of these ship designs.
The power signatures are completely unknown. How many ships total?
Approximately 120 vessels, but they're smaller than our dreadnoughts. This should still be a manageable engagement.
Admiral Crixtel felt some of his confidence return.
Numbers and mass still favored the hegemony significantly. All ships, advance and engage.
Target the largest human vessels first. The hegemony fleet surged forward, their massive dreadnoughts leading the assault. plasma cannons charged, shield generators hummed with power, and targeting computers locked onto the approaching human ships. The first exchange of fire lit up space between the fleets. The hegemony's opening salvo was devastating, hundreds of plasma beams lancing out toward the human formation. But something was wrong. The human ships weren't where they were supposed to be. What happened to our targeting? Admiral Crixtel demanded.
Sir, the human ships are moving unlike anything we've encountered.
Their acceleration and maneuvering capabilities exceed our projections by orders of magnitude.
On the tactical display, Admiral Crixtel watched in growing alarm as human squadrons danced between hegemony firing solutions. Ships that should have been hit by concentrated plasma fire seemed to flow around the attacks like water.
Then, the humans returned fire. The weapons that emerged from the human ships were nothing like the energy beams or projectile weapons the hegemony was used to facing.
Instead, streams of something that looked like liquid fire reached out from the human vessels, and, wherever they touched hegemony ships, armor didn't just melt, it ceased to exist. Sir, the damage control officer called out in panic.
The dreadnought Eternal Conquest is reporting complete hull breach. Their armor is simply gone. Impossible. What kind of weapon can do that? Unknown, sir. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database.
Admiral Crixtel watched in horror as one of his most powerful dreadnoughts, a ship designed to reduce planets to ash, broke apart under continued human fire. The proud vessel that had conquered dozens of worlds died in less than 5 minutes.
All ships, concentrate fire on Human Squadron 7. Overwhelm them with mass fire.
But the human squadrons weren't staying still long enough to be overwhelmed. They moved in patterns that defied understanding, supporting each other with precise timing while avoiding the devastating return fire that should have destroyed them.
Admiral, his tactical officer reported, voice strained, they're not fighting like a fleet. They're fighting like individual hunters working together.
That was exactly what they were doing, Admiral Crixtel realized with growing dread. Instead of the massive formation battles the hegemony had perfected, the humans were conducting what could only be described as pack hunting on a space warfare scale. Sir, the humans are targeting our command and control ships specifically. They're going after our communications vessels and fleet coordination platforms.
How do they know which ships handle coordination?
Unknown, sir, but their targeting is incredibly precise. As if summoned by his words, a squadron of human ships came streaking directly toward the galactic order.
Admiral Crixtel watched their approach with fascination and terror.
The ships moved like living things, weaving through defensive fire with a grace that seemed impossible for mechanical constructs.
All defensive batteries, concentrate on the approaching squadron.
The space around the flagship filled with plasma fire as every defensive weapon opened up simultaneously. For a moment, Admiral Crixtel thought they had succeeded. The volume of fire was so intense that nothing could survive it.
Then, the human ships emerged from the plasma storm, their hulls gleaming and, apparently undamaged. How? He whispered. His question was answered when the human weapons struck his flagship.
The strange liquid fire that had destroyed the Eternal Conquest washed over the Galactic Order's shields, and Admiral Crixtel watched in disbelief as the most advanced defensive systems in the galaxy simply stopped working.
Shields down. Hull breach on decks 7 through 15.
Sir, they're not trying to destroy us, the tactical officer reported with confusion. They could have targeted our reactor or command center, but they're hitting non-critical systems.
Admiral Crixtel understood.
They weren't trying to kill him, they were trying to disable his ship, capture him alive.
The implications were staggering. Emergency transmission to all ships, he ordered. Retreat to minimum safe distance and regroup.
As the hegemony fleet began to pull back, Admiral Crixtel took stock of the engagement. In 30 minutes of fighting, the humans had destroyed or disabled 15 dreadnoughts and over 50 support vessels.
Hegemony casualties were in the tens of thousands. Human losses appeared to be zero.
Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving another transmission from Admiral Hayes.
The human face appeared on the screen again, and, this time Admiral Crixtel could see the bridge behind him. It was filled with humans working with calm efficiency, and he could see tactical displays showing the complete disposition of the hegemony fleet. Admiral Crixtel, Hayes began, I believe you're beginning to understand your situation. This engagement proves nothing, Crixtel replied, though his shifting carapace colors betrayed his uncertainty. You have achieved tactical surprise, but the hegemony has faced setbacks before. This isn't a setback, Hayes said quietly. This is education. For 3 months, we've been studying the data that New Eden transmitted. Every ship design, every weapon system, every tactical formation you use. We know how you think, how you fight, how you've conquered 3,000 worlds. The human admiral stood up, and Admiral Crixtel could see the cold determination in his eyes. But, here's what you don't understand about humanity, Admiral. We don't just study our enemies, we adapt to them. Every weapon you've fired at us has been analyzed and countered. Every tactic you've used has been anticipated and prepared for. You came here expecting to fight another primitive species with inferior technology and no coordination. Hayes gestured to his tactical display, which showed the positions of every hegemony ship in real time. Instead, you've encountered a species that has spent 3 months doing nothing but preparing to kill you specifically. Admiral Crixtel felt a chill run through his crystalline body. You cannot have developed such advanced technology in only 3 months. You're right, Hayes agreed. We didn't develop it in 3 months. Humans have been preparing for interstellar war for over 2 centuries. We've been building, testing, refining, and perfecting our weapons and tactics since before we left our homeworld. The only thing we were missing was detailed intelligence about our potential enemies. The human admiral smiled again, that same unsettling expression. New Eden gave us that intelligence. They died to teach us exactly how to kill you. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Crixtel staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to coordinate the retreat, but he could see the fear in their movements. For the first time in 3 centuries, a hegemony fleet had been not just defeated, but completely outmatched. Sir, his aide Trakven called out, what are our orders? Admiral Crixtel studied the tactical display one more time. The human fleet was holding position, not pursuing their retreat. They were confident enough in their superiority to let the hegemony fleet withdraw and regroup. Signal the fleet, he said finally. Full retreat to the secondary rally point. And send an emergency transmission to Hegemony Command. What should we tell them, sir? Admiral Crixtel's carapace had settled into a deep, dark red, the color of fear and recognition of mortal danger. Tell them that everything has changed. The humans aren't like the others. They're not just another primitive species to be conquered. He paused, watching as his broken fleet limped away from the system where they had expected an easy victory. Tell them we may have awakened something that could destroy us all. As the galactic order jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Crixtel couldn't shake the memory of Admiral Hayes' final words. The humans hadn't just been preparing for 3 months, they had been preparing for centuries. New Eden hadn't been a tragedy for humanity, it had been the final piece of information they needed to turn themselves into the perfect weapon against the hegemony. For 300 years, the hegemony had conquered through overwhelming force applied against unprepared enemies. They had never faced a species that was ready for them, that had studied them, that had spent generations preparing for exactly this kind of war. Admiral Crixtel realized with growing horror that the hegemony hadn't just lost a battle, they had walked into a trap 2 centuries in the making. Humanity had used their own conquest as bait, sacrificing New Eden to gain the knowledge they needed to fight back effectively. The galaxy's newest species had just announced their presence in the most definitive way possible. They had defeated the hegemony's finest fleet with apparent ease, and they had done it with technology and tactics that rendered centuries of hegemony military doctrine obsolete. As his flagship fled through hyperspace, Admiral Crixtel found himself wondering if the hegemony had just encountered their master or their executioner. The Great Council of the Hegemony had not convened an emergency session in over a century. Representatives from all 12 species sat in their designated sections of the massive circular chamber, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, hisses, growls, and electronic tones that the translation systems worked frantically to process. At the center of the chamber, Supreme Chancellor Mordeth of the Uartak Dominion called for order. The Uartak were the founding species of the hegemony, ancient and proud, and their word carried absolute authority in times of crisis.
Fellow members of the hegemony, Mordetha's deep, rumbling voice echoed through the chamber, we face an unprecedented situation.
Admiral Crixtel has returned from the human sector with disturbing news.
The holographic display in the center of the chamber activated, showing the tactical recordings from the battle at the human system. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as hegemony dreadnoughts were systematically destroyed or disabled by smaller human vessels moving with impossible coordination.
This cannot be accurate, declared Representative Vexon of the Drachmarie.
No species develops such advanced technology in mere months. The recordings have been verified multiple times, Admiral Crixtel responded from his position near the display. His crystalline carapace had remained a deep, fearful red since his return. The humans were prepared for us. Not just prepared, they were specifically designed to counter our capabilities.
Supreme Chancellor Mordeth gestured for attention. Admiral, explain to the Council how a primitive species achieved such rapid advancement.
Crixtel manipulated the controls, and the display shifted to show detailed scans of human vessels.
Intelligence analysis suggests they didn't achieve rapid advancement.
Evidence indicates they've been developing these capabilities for over 2 centuries.
A wave of shocked communication swept through the chamber.
Representative Gorthax of the Vorthok warrior caste spoke up.
Impossible. Our scouts have monitored human space for decades.
They showed no signs of advanced military capability.
Because they hid it, Crixtel replied grimly.
Everything they allowed us to see was carefully controlled.
Their primitive colonies, their outdated defense systems, their apparent lack of coordination between worlds, it was all deliberate misdirection.
The display changed again, showing communications intercepts from the battle.
Admiral Hayes' final transmission played for the assembled council, his words echoing through the chamber with deadly clarity.
We've been building, testing, refining, and perfecting our weapons and tactics since before we left our homeworld.
The only thing we were missing was detailed intelligence about our potential enemies.
New Eden gave us that intelligence.
Supreme Chancellor Mordetha's massive form shifted uneasily. You're suggesting that humanity deliberately sacrificed one of their colonies to gain tactical intelligence? Not just tactical intelligence, Crixtel corrected. Complete intelligence.
They know our ship designs, our weapon capabilities, our tactical doctrines, our command structure, our technology base. They recorded everything during the destruction of New Eden and spent 3 months developing specific countermeasures.
Representative Silvara of the Kellian Engineering Corps accessed the technical data.
These human weapons, they're not just advanced, they're specifically designed to counter our defensive systems.
Their ships aren't just fast, they're configured to exploit weaknesses in our targeting computers.
It's as if, Crixtel said quietly, they built their entire military specifically to fight us. The implications hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. For 3 centuries, the hegemony had expanded through overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. They found primitive species, crushed their defenses, and absorbed their worlds. It was a proven formula that had never failed.
But humanity had turned that formula against them.
They had appeared primitive deliberately, allowing the hegemony to attack while they gathered intelligence and prepared their true capabilities.
What are their numbers? Asked Representative Thekmore of the Zephyrian Collective.
Crixtel's carapace darkened further.
Unknown.
Intelligence suggests they have at least 50 colonized systems, possibly more. Population estimates range from 8 to 12 billion across all their worlds.
And their fleet strength? Also unknown.
What we fought was clearly a single battle group.
If their other fleets are similarly equipped. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to.
Supreme Chancellor Mordeth called for silence as discussions threatened to become chaotic.
Admiral Crixtel, in your professional assessment, what is humanity's current military capability compared to the hegemony? The crystal being was silent for a long moment before answering. Chancellor, in a straight fight using conventional tactics, humanity would lose.
They have perhaps 200 ships to our 3,000.
But they're not fighting conventionally. The Admiral activated new displays showing tactical analysis.
They're fighting asymmetrically, using superior technology and coordination to achieve tactical victories despite numerical disadvantage.
Every engagement favors them because they choose when and where to fight. Recommendation? Immediate mobilization of our entire fleet. Concentrated assault on their homeworld before they can prepare further defenses. But Representative Gorthax objected. Admiral, you yourself said they've been preparing for 2 centuries. What makes you think their homeworld isn't the most heavily defended target in their space? Before Crixtel could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber.
Emergency lights bathed the Great Council in red illumination as communications officers rushed to their stations. Supreme Chancellor, called the Senior Communications Officer, were receiving transmissions from 12 different border sectors.
They're all reporting the same thing. Which is human fleets. Multiple battle groups attacking our forward positions simultaneously.
The central display flickered to life, showing a tactical map of hegemony space.
Red warning indicators appeared at dozens of locations along the border with human territory. As they watched, more indicators appeared, spreading deeper into hegemony space. How many ships? Supreme Chancellor Mordeth demanded. Preliminary reports suggest over 30 separate battle groups, each consisting of 15 to 20 vessels.
Representative Silvara's engineering mind quickly did the calculations.
That's 600 ships minimum. Where did they get 600 advanced warships? The answer came from the communications officer.
Sir, we're receiving a direct transmission.
It's being broadcast on all frequencies across our entire territory. Put it through.
The image that appeared on the main display was not Admiral Hayes, but a woman in a different military uniform. She was older, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to look directly at each member of the council.
I am Admiral Elena Vasquez, Supreme Commander of the United Colonies Defense Force.
I addressed the Great Council of the Hegemony. The fact that she knew about the emergency session, knew the names and titles of their government, sent another chill through the assembled representatives. 3 months ago, you destroyed our colony at New Eden. 2 million innocent people died for the crime of refusing to become your slaves. You intended this as a demonstration of your power, a warning to humanity about the consequences of resistance. Admiral Vasquez paused, and, when she continued, her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. Instead, you gave us a demonstration of your methods, your capabilities, and your weaknesses. You showed us exactly what we were fighting against, and you gave us the motivation to do something we had never done before in our species' history. The display behind her changed to show massive shipyards, clearly human but, on a scale that dwarfed anything in the hegemony database. Hundreds of warships were visible in various stages of construction. For 2 centuries, humanity has built our military in secret, preparing for the day we might face a galactic threat.
We knew that eventually, someone like you would come.
Someone who believes that might makes right, who thinks the strong have the right to enslave the weak. More images flashed by training facilities, weapons testing ranges, entire worlds converted to military production. What you didn't understand about humanity is this: we are very, very good at killing things that threaten us. We spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war on our own world before we ever reached the stars. And, when we do reach the stars, we don't forget those lessons. The scene shifted to show human fleets in action. Not the single battle group that had faced Admiral Crixtel, but dozens of them, striking hegemony positions with devastating precision. The ships attacking your border positions represent just the first wave of our response to New Eden. We have been building toward this moment for 3 months, since the day you murdered our people.
Supreme Chancellor Mordeth found his voice. Admiral Vasquez, the hegemony is prepared to negotiate.
Perhaps we were hasty in our assessment of humanity's status.
Admiral Vasquez smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression.
There will be no negotiation. You had your chance for diplomacy when Governor Chin tried to discuss terms.
You chose bombardment instead.
The transmission shifted to show what appeared to be a star map of the entire region.
Human fleet positions were marked in blue, spreading throughout hegemony space like an infection.
What you're witnessing is the implementation of a strategic plan we call total liberation. Every hegemony world, every conquered species, every slave race you've collected over 3 centuries, they're all going to be freed.
Representative Vexon of the Drakmarie protested. You cannot seriously intend to wage war against the entire hegemony. Not wage war, Admiral Vasquez corrected. End it. The star map zoomed in to show detailed battle plans. Human fleets were positioned to strike every major hegemony world simultaneously.
We've spent 3 months not just building ships, but planning the complete dismantlement of your empire. Every species you've conquered has been contacted. Every slave world knows that liberation is coming. Every client race understands that they have a choice: help us free their people, or be freed regardless. As if to emphasize her point, new reports began flooding into the Great Council chamber. Sir, the communications officer called out in panic, we're getting reports of uprisings on Kellyan worlds.
The slave populations are rebelling. Drakmari client worlds are refusing to respond to orders. The Vorthak warrior caste is demanding explanations about why they're fighting for their own enslavement. Admiral Vasquez nodded as if she had expected this. We didn't just spend 3 months building weapons, council members.
We spent 3 months teaching your own people what freedom means. Supreme Chancellor Mordeth rose from his ceremonial throne, his massive form towering over the chamber.
Admiral, you underestimate the hegemony's power.
We have ruled this sector for 3 centuries. We have technologies and capabilities you cannot imagine.
Show me. The simple challenge hung in the air.
For the first time in 3 centuries, someone was openly defying the hegemony's power and demanding proof of their superiority. Sir, Admiral Crixtel whispered urgently, our fleets are being systematically destroyed. Every engagement favors the humans. Our numerical advantage means nothing if we can't effectively engage them.
Then, we use the Devastator fleet, Mordeth declared.
Activate the reserve forces.
Deploy every ship we have. Admiral Vasquez seemed to hear him despite the closed transmission. You're thinking about your reserve fleets, aren't you? The ships you keep hidden for absolute emergencies?
The blood drained from Admiral Crixtel's crystalline form as he realized the implications.
We know about them too, Vasquez continued. We know about your secret shipyards, your hidden weapons, your emergency protocols.
New Eden transmitted more than just tactical data, Council. They transmitted everything, including the complete communications logs from your command ship. The Great Council chamber fell silent as the full scope of their situation became clear. Humanity didn't just have superior weapons and tactics, they had complete intelligence about every aspect of hegemony operations. This is impossible, Representative Gorthax muttered.
No species is this prepared. No species has had 3 centuries to watch you conquer the galaxy, Admiral Vasquez replied.
No species has been able to study your methods while remaining hidden. No species has had the luxury of time to prepare for exactly this scenario. The transmission began to fade, but her final words echoed through the chamber with absolute finality.
The hegemony dies today. Your empire of slaves ends now.
And every free species in the galaxy will remember that humanity kept its promise to the people of New Eden.
As the transmission ended, emergency reports continued flooding in from across hegemony space.
Human fleets were striking everywhere simultaneously, targeting key installations with surgical precision while broadcasting liberation messages to conquered populations. Supreme Chancellor Mordeth slowly sank back into his throne as the scope of the disaster became clear.
In a single day, 3 centuries of careful expansion and control were unraveling.
How long until our reserve fleets can respond? He asked weakly. Unknown, sir, Admiral Crixtel replied.
Many of our secret installations are already under attack. The humans knew exactly where to strike.
The Great Council sat in stunned silence as reports continued to arrive.
The hegemony's greatest strength, the ability to concentrate overwhelming force against isolated targets, had been turned into their greatest weakness.
Their spread-out empire was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that had spent months planning for exactly this moment.
Representative Silvara of the Kellyan Engineering Corps spoke what everyone was thinking.
They didn't just defeat us militarily.
They defeated us strategically, politically, and psychologically.
They turned our own success against us. As the lights dimmed in the Great Council chamber and emergency broadcasts filled the communications channels, one truth became undeniable: humanity had not just won a battle or even a war. they had ended an empire. The hegemony's 300-year reign over the galaxy was over, brought down by a species that had learned from every mistake, planned for every contingency, and, most importantly, never forgotten the cost of freedom. New Eden had been avenged, and the galaxy would never be the same.